My name is Jerome Singletary, and I'm a 46-year-old African-American gay male. I was first confronted with the idea that I might have HIV while I was dating a man in Los Angeles who turned out to be an intravenous crystal meth user, and he was also positive. I was unfortunately pricked by one of his needles, and it was at that point that he actually shared the fact that he was HIV positive, because prior to that, he did not make me aware that he was even HIV positive. What drove me to be tested for HIV were the fact that I was constantly being bombarded as the years progressed with one illness after the other, be it a sinus infection, an ear infection, bronchitis, a chest cold that could have turned into pneumonia. It was just never ending. And I kind of told myself, oh, I'm traveling too much, I'm way too busy, I'm breathing recycled air in airplanes. I told myself all the things that one tells themselves when they're in denial. But ultimately, I had to think back to the days of when I was in high school and my uncle, who was HIV positive, the opportunistic infections that he encountered time after time. I kept being reminded of those instances with him. And truthfully, that's what forced me to get tested. To be quite honest, I did not handle receiving the results of my HIV diagnosis well at all. First of all, the doctor that I had at the time, this was out of his depth. And I knew something was wrong because he always had his nurse lead me into one of the exam rooms. And on this particular occasion, after I had done blood work, he had her lead me down the long hallway to his medical office. So I knew something was up. And when he said those three little letters, HIV, human immunodeficiency, wow, virus, I saw black. I thought my life was over. I felt utter despair. I was embarrassed. I felt shame. And ultimately, I was disappointed in myself because I knew that I was now going to be faced with the task of sharing this information with my family, and especially with my mother's side of the family, knowing that they had just previously gone through hell with my uncle's illness and ultimate demise. I was just so disappointed that I was going to be the bearer of that news and ultimately force my family to endure that journey again. I first dealt with it in the only way I knew how, which was to sublimate my emotion by using. I too, in the course of dealing with that boyfriend, I too had become addicted to crystal meth. And so I turned to what I knew best, which was using drugs. I put myself in an absolute state of utter numbness. And it was probably about 3 months after my diagnosis before I actually shared the news with my family. It was a rough time. But even before that, while I was in the throes of a relapsed addiction, which was the worst, I I shut myself off. I closed myself down from the world. I was fortunate in that time to have the type of job. I worked for a Fortune 500 IT company that allowed me to telecommute, and I informed my superiors of my diagnosis, and they gave me carte blanche leeway to work from home. And I did so for about a month. And I barely shaved, hardly bathed. I literally cocooned myself in my room in a pit of drugs, despair, and abject loneliness. Because I knew my life was over. I was going to die. I believe that when we're faced with a life or death disease such as HIV/AIDS, like I am, I had a choice, and the first option, which I gravitated towards, was self-destruction. But when I went to my family and shared the news with them, I was never more nervous because I was so afraid of the shame and disappointment that I was bringing on them. But they met me with love and openness and encouragement and support in ways that I wasn't even aware existed. And what that did, it sparked a light in me that taught me that even if the end came tomorrow, it didn't have to come with me laying in a pool of my own vomit because I'm in some crack den on Baltimore Street with ne'er-do-wells, which is not at all who I am or where I come from. I made a choice to connect to my higher power. I made a choice to reconnect and recommit to my family and friends and loved ones. And their love and support bolstered me to want to get the help that I have since received. And it's given me a whole new lease on life because through my illness, which is my test, it has now become my testimony. I now work in advocacy and outreach for HIV health care and prevention. I speak to other men who sleep with men who are at risk for contracting the disease. I let them know that it is not the death sentence that it once was in the 80s. There is no longer a 6 to 18 month life expectancy. I've been positive for more than 15 years, although I've only been diagnosed for just under 10. So I know now that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and there is a tomorrow. I have absolutely accepted being HIV positive because ultimately I had no other choice. You know, it was either accept it and decide, Jerome, what are you going to do now? Now what? You know, I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with this? And I decided to avail myself of the education. I've done a lot of research. I've met a lot of folks who play an integral role in research, advancement, and development with respect to this disease. I happen to be fortunate enough to live in a city where there is a lot of work being done and a lot of emphasis and a lot of attention being paid to HIV development and research. And I'm happy to be a part of that. And I make myself available to anyone and everyone, be it the school around the corner who wants to meet with the former drug user or the ex-convict or the professional who happens to be HIV positive. I just use my voice, my light, my energy to impact something positive on this dark mark of a disease. The advice that I would give to a young person or to any person who is newly diagnosed with this disease is, first of all, tell someone. Tell someone close to you. Don't walk this journey alone. I would also tell them, reach out. Get yourself into care. The first thing I did was I looked for a doctor who was well renowned in HIV research and advancement. Put yourself in care and link up with a group of people who are living with the disease. Learn from them. They are your brothers and your sisters because they've walked this road days, weeks, months, years ahead of you. And they know what you're going through. And ultimately just know that you're not alone and that there is a tomorrow. We can live with this disease. I am living proof. You can live with HIV. I live with HIV. I have HIV, but HIV does not have me.